affairs is the current state of affairs. I just said it makes sense in common parlance to use these distinctions. That's all I said. I didn't offer any sort of historical analysis of why that might be the case. I don't give a shit, right? The point is that when people say you're agnostic, that's a person saying, I don't know if God exists. Most people say, I don't know if God exists. If they don't know if God exists, they say they're agnostic. And when people offer up that explanation, it's usually when people mean something like, I don't have a belief either way. It could be the case that God exists, or it could be the case that no God exists. If someone says, how many, do you think that the number of stars is odd or even? And they say, I don't know. They're saying something like, I don't have a belief either way, right? I don't believe the number of stars is odd. I don't believe the number of stars is even.
But what if I say that the number of stars is 100,027, and if you don't believe me, you're going to go to hell? Do you believe me or not?
What the fuck are you talking about?
Oh, Jesus.
What's that? No, I don't believe you.
Exactly.
I say I don't know how many fucking stars there are.
Exactly. So you're
right. You just say I don't believe you. You don't need a term for it.
To that.
Like there doesn't need to be a special term for it. You just say I don't believe that shit.
But the reason that there needs to be a special term for that is that there are massive groups within society that are desperate to force people into a religious context. And that's why we have a name for our opposition to that context.
I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Look, the person who believes,
don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
If you believe it's any number besides that, then you have an opposite position to that person. If you don't believe either way, if you think it could be the case that's true, then you're agnostic on this taxonomy. You're agnostic to the number of stars, right? So I don't know what the fucking issue is. You can either be not the same thing arises. You can be not agnostic or agnostic.
Okay.
So you have one belief either way.
So what's the point of this argument?
I don't fucking know. I'm just trying to figure out what the issue is. Like, what, do you have an issue with being called agnostic?
No, I just have an issue with people then saying that precludes me from being an atheist.
Jesus Christ.
Well, like on the definition of atheism, you don't think that you're an atheist, right? The definition that the people have in mind who are precluding you from being an atheist. You're not an atheist by that definition.
Different people use different definitions.
Look, by the person who's accusing you.
If we don't agree, there's no conversation.
Yeah, if a person is accusing you of that, and they mean by atheist that a person who believes that there are no gods, if that's what they mean, then you agree that you're not an atheist unless you believe that, right?
I would say to that person, by your definition, I'm not an atheist, but I don't agree with or accept your definition.
What the fuck are you talking about? You did accept their definition. I don't even understand.
I don't.
You're just saying that yeah, you do. What do you mean by accept? Do you mean I don't use that definition all the time? That's what you fucking mean by accept?
I mean that I don't, prefer to commonly use that definition in my language.
Okay, fine. Good for you. Fuck off.
Hey, you guys are the ones who come to us with these things and, raising these points.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Look, there was only like one person who did that, right? This is a chat room. He's got 30 people in here, right? Contrary to what you might believe, people aren't not going into your subreddit because they're afraid of you. There's not a single person in this room that's afraid of you. Did you see my other thread about the aliens in the garage?
Let me see. I think I might have noticed it.
Yeah, you probably made some sort of like vapid comment and dismissed it, hand waved it, but you probably have no idea what it's saying. I bet you think that syllogism is fallacious too, right?
I'm still waiting for atheists to give evidence for atheism.
Are you talking about the fact that there's not aliens in your garage? That's evidence that there's not aliens?
Yeah.
Fuck you, that's why I'm an agnostic atheist, to defeat that stupid argument.
You defeat an argument with a definition?
Effectively, yes.
Are you an agnostic atheist about the Christian God?
Look, I don't understand. The only thing that there is for you to do is to go around telling people, hey, when that issue comes up, just say, hey, I'd like atheism differently. And if they don't agree, then you're basically fucking powerless. Saying, I don't mean the same thing as you when I say atheist. And it's like, oh, okay. You know?
Maybe we can.
Like, there's nothing more.
Maybe we could actually discuss the ideas then, rather than labels. But some people seem afraid to do that.
You go around just strapping atheist onto your label.
It's people like you that sit there arguing about the definition rather than just saying, okay, well, that's not what I call myself, but if that's what you define it as, then call me whatever you want, and then attack them for something else.
Over.
Hey, Josh, I want you to read this.
Then you get to the argument.
Awesome Sauce.
I can't. I'm driving right now.
Oh, I'll just read it to you. Awesome Sauce says, atheist is an absence of. It's the in-between. It's if theism is on and anti-theism is off, atheism is no lamp.
Anti-theism in this too. Jesus.
Russelsteapot, you're an agnostic atheist about the Christian God?
You could be a theist and you could be an anti-theist at the same time, right? Like a theist, if you like say that you wanted
like
there
what
to be
Goblet says. You'd have to keep going down every god and saying, yes, I'm against this god and that one and that one and that one and that. Every time a god's brought up, you'd have to start answering every question.
Well, what about the example about
when the terms used in common parlance right now already straighten that out? Hey, I don't believe your Christian God exists, or I don't believe so and so exists.
Under his definition, can't you be an atheist and not an atheist at the same time? Can't you be an atheist and not an atheist at the same time?
No.
Under his definition.
Why would that be the case?
Because you're an atheist to some gods and not the others.
I'm an atheist to all gods.
Say atheist instead of agnostic atheist.
Right, but a Christian would be both a theist and an atheist under your definition.
I don't usually go with the you're an atheist to all gods except the one that you picked. I mean, it's not really a logical position to say that. It's just a way of illustrating a point. An atheist is one who does not believe in any gods. That's my definition.
How about this question that came up earlier, right? So it was posed whether or not in the universe there are an even number of stars or an odd number of stars. Do you lack a belief that the number of stars in the universe is even?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so then you're a positive belief that there's odd number of stars in the universe.
No.
That's the exact same form of your atheism.
No. You're talking nonsense.
Look, here's the analog, right? Do you lack a belief that God exists? Therefore, you're an atheist, right? As opposed to a theist.
Because an atheist is one who does not believe in God.
You lack a belief that there's an even number of stars. Therefore, you're the oddest.
So every Christian that doesn't believe in Allah,
that they're
an atheist. So now you're saying they're a Christian atheist.
No, that's also insane, and you're bringing up arguments.
What do you call someone that believes in the Christian God but doesn't believe in Allah?
I usually call them a Christian.
Definitions, you don't.
What definition am I using in your opinion?
Definitions. That would be a theist atheist.
What definition?
Definition do you use that an atheist is the lack of belief of a God?
My definition.
You now have an atheist theist.
No, let's not equivocate because that's not no. Because what you'll say is, if the Christian believes in the Christian God, but they don't believe in Allah, you're not just saying that they are. What you would do is call them an atheist with regard to the Islamic God, right?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I might say something like that in order to illustrate a point, but I'm not actually claiming.
You literally just contradicted yourself. You said, "No, I wouldn't." I might say that.
I feel like
Jesus Christ.
I feel like everybody hold on a sec. I feel like everybody just got like this really uncharitable mood going, because what it's like on the definition. His definition of atheism is just for all X. If X is a god, I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist just in case I don't believe in X, for all X. But it has to be that the person doesn't believe in any gods. So if they don't meet that criterion, that for all X, they do not believe that X, where X is a god, then they're not an atheist. So that's just, it only takes one condition. If they believe in Allah, then they're not an atheist. If they believe in Zeus, they're not an atheist, etc., etc.
Someone understands logic.
The agnostic atheist shit that atheists do is just when they're atheists do that when they're too cowardly to defend their position.
That's true.
Are you a murderer?
No.
Can you defend
Yes.
you are not a murderer?
Yeah, I haven't
I'm
committed murder.
Murdered.
How can you prove that?
I'm a murderer.
Have murdered.
Well,
Does that mean I'm a murderer?
Apparently, there's evidence I'm a pedophile.
But I guess I'm not clear. Why should they have to defend it?
Look, he's unsure whether the Christian God exists. Like, oh, I'm not sure. It might be possible that an omnipotent, logically incoherent, omniscient God exists. I won't make the claim that can't exist because I'm a pussy.
You're not answering my question. Why should they have to defend it?
Why should they have to
He's
defend
come up
what?
with the
Oh.
definition for
Defend the
atheist
fact
that lets
that they
lets
don't have a
Christians be
belief.
atheists.
Defend the fact that they don't have a belief in God.
Wow, some people just love strawmanning me. Just
No,
can't.
but I want to understand what Godless is saying. Why should they have to justify the fact that they don't have a belief?
No, he's no.
That-
What I'm saying
he's
is he's
saying-
afraid to make the claim that it's impossible that a logically incoherent,
Right.
omnipotent God exists because he's a coward. Because he won't defend. He's a fucking coward, and he's afraid to defend the position that he actually does hold.
But what Godless is saying is that he truly disbelieves in a God, and is just right. He truly disbelieves in a God, but just won't take that position publicly because he doesn't want to defend that position.
There
That's what Godless is.
there are gods or God concepts that I will state that I believe actively gnostically that I have knowledge that they cannot exist, and the tri-omni God is probably one that I'd be pretty firmly say.
But if somebody
good at every God.
said that somebody said I disbelieve in all gods, would that be a claim that requires justification?
Only if I thought they were lying about their personal.
No, I'm asking Josh.
So, the question is, someone said they disbelieve in all gods. No, no. But if someone said that
I believe
no
it's
God-
impossible. If they say I believe it's impossible for that God to exist, then they have to defend that claim. But he's too
That's
pussy,
different.
coward to make that claim.
That's
they
different.
don't, they
If
don't,
somebody
they don't,
said I-
they don't have to defend. They don't have to defend the claim about their belief, right? But if they're asserting to you that there are no gods or whatever, right, and you don't believe that, then they do have to justify it in order for you to have any reason to accept what they're saying, right? But they don't have to defend that they believe that. You can accept that they believe that there are no gods, but that's not a reason for you to accept that there are no gods. So if they assert that there are no gods and there's an interest in debate or whatever, then yeah, they have to defend that position.
Yeah. So what's the part that's illegitimate?
Well, I think that what's being taken umbrage with is just the fact that the idea that a person believes that there are no gods, but they don't. I guess they don't want to give justification for that claim, but they don't want to admit that they don't want to give justification for that claim. I guess that's the thing.
But they don't need to give justification, right? You're agreeing.
Yeah, but Jack, the point is he's trying to call himself an agnostic atheist, right? And that's because he lacks belief in a God, but at the same time, he lacks a disbelief in a God, right? So instead of calling him, I mean, by that rationale, you could call him an agnostic theist. It would be just as warranted. Wouldn't you agree?
A disbelief is a rejection of a claim or a rejection of a belief. It's not the statement that the opposite is true.
So Huxley's use of the term agnostic, right, made it the case that there were people who claimed agnosticism, right, but who were in some sense atheists because they didn't actually believe in a God, right? Because they said, well, I don't know one way or another,
right,
but I don't happen to believe, right? So they're de facto atheists because they don't believe, but they're also agnostics, right? Because they have some kind of belief about how it's not something that they could know one way or another. Does that seem illegitimate?
That's my position on the vast majority of gods.
An agnostic.
But Jack, does it matter that he's going into debate rooms? Like, what if there's like a formal debate with the topic, does God exist? Then you're saying that the atheist doesn't have to give any arguments for atheism. All he has to do is attack his opponent's arguments?
Well, if his opponent says God exists, he can say, what's your justification for that?
So
you're saying in a formal debate with the topic, does God exist, you don't have to actually give any arguments for atheism?
A proper debate topic is not, does God exist? A proper debate topic is, God exists or God does not exist. And one side makes an active case and the other tries to show that that case is unwarranted. It's exactly like a murder trial, where one side is trying to convince the jury that the defendant is guilty of murder, and the other side is trying to show that the prosecution has not made their case.
Jack, do you think you agree with that? Like, it's like the atheist is innocent until proven guilty, like a court case?
It's not
well,
the atheist is
saying that the atheist.
It's God is innocent until proven guilty of existence.
Chill out, Matt Delani. What are you saying, Jack?
I'm saying the atheist doesn't have to make any claim. If they're asked, do you believe in God, right? They'll say, no, don't believe in God, right? So we've agreed that there's no reason why anybody should have to justify that claim. It could just be a basic belief, right? So if there are theists around who are saying God exists, I don't see why the atheist has to give support for atheism. The atheist can just say, okay, why should I believe that God exists? Right? Can you establish it?
Okay, what if they're claiming it's irrational to believe in God? Do they have to defend that?
Yes, that would be a positive claim.
So do you, Russelsteapot, do you think it's irrational to believe in God?
It depends on the specific God claim. But I would say that with the amounts of information that I currently have access to, belief in God is unwarranted. It may be that someone out there has access to information.
Not unwarranted. Is it irrational?
I would say that I do not currently possess rational justification to believe in God.
That's not the question. I'm saying, are you too afraid to make the claim that it's irrational to believe a God exists?
You've got to get personal here, don't you? I am not going to say that it is absolutely 100% irrational for any person in any circumstance.
You're a fucking pussy.
Any God.
Pussy.
Fuck you, bitch. That's what this is going to devolve into. Like, we're just going to sling insults at each other.
Well, that's where the fun is,
This
right?
is coming from the guy that said theists are too afraid to come into his subreddit.
I mean, like, if you're just going to insult me, that's great. You don't have any arguments. I understand.
I haven't heard one argument from you. We've actually made arguments.
What arguments am I supposed to be making exactly?
You won't make any claims.
Exactly.
Well, you said, well, exactly.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
100%.
No, well, that's not true. You said that you have arguments against specific specific versions of God, right?
I do feel like the triomni God is incoherent.
What's your argument for that? Uh-oh.
Let me,
No, that would be.
Been a while since I've addressed this, so let me actually
Google it.
Okay, well,
He said he's
fuck
gonna.
you
Did
guys
you say
too.
he's gonna Google it?
No,
I
some
said
other asshole said that.
So what do you need time to do?
Construct an actual syllogism?
Go ahead.
You have a subreddit that theists are too afraid to comment, but you don't even know offhand how to argue against the three omnis.
It's not like it's something that, a lot of people actually try to defend frequently.
You're kidding?
Nope.
That's like a hot button issue in Christian theism. Are you kidding me?
Are you arguing against the coherency of a God possessing the triomni properties, or against the Trinity? Hello?
He's
I said
looking
the
in his
three
notes.
omnis. The Trinity is just a weird, we decided to be polytheists and just pretend that we're not thing.
I bet he's going to say something about a rock so heavy you can't lift it. Here it comes in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How do you account for the necessary preconditions for the intelligibility of the
Wonderful. Okay. Okay.
Oh my God.
Oh God.
Maybe people just don't come in your subreddit because you just sit there Googling like arguments. I don't think they're actually afraid.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think that. What do you think that people are afraid of?
They're afraid of the truth.
I think you guys are all internet atheists, and you guys just go like, citation please, checkmate theist.
They're afraid of the truth. It's like the number one line you hear from conspiracy theory groups.
So the more specific things into the three omni thing, my biggest issue usually comes down to people who say both, that the three omni God exists, and also that there's this whole reliance on free will, and free will exists because something that is all powerful and all knowing can't really be contiguous with a universe in which free will exists and in which any other actor at least has free will, because a being like that, by the necessity of having all power, and especially by being the creature that creates the universe, doesn't allow for that. Like, they would know all possibilities, and they would create the world that would incorporate the possibilities that
Don't you think that
they would know all other possibilities.
Don't you think an omnipotent being would be capable of creating any world?
That's the point I'm making. That an omnipotent being could
So
create
what's the
any
contradiction
world.
then?
An omnipotent being could create any world and would know the exact state of every aspect of every world they possibly could create. So every aspect of the world that such a God create is necessarily that God's will and not the free will of any other actor. That God decided how every actor would act when that God created the world.
Well, all you're saying, see, on that analysis, all that means is that free actions are the types of things that God can't create, right? That defies them being free. Presumably on an incompatibilist view of freedom. So that doesn't show that omniscience is incompatible, or omnipotence is incompatible with freedom. What it shows is that free actions are ones that cannot be authored by God. That's all that shows.
Okay. I mean, that's the definition of free actions.
But there can still be, right, but there can still be freedom then.
Not in a way that people can be held accountable for anything, because God is the one who is responsible for all action. God is the one who has decided what you will eat for breakfast this morning, because he picked the world in which you ate what you ate.
That's begging the question.
What question is it begging?
I'm saying that free actions are going to be ontologically prior to any of their instances. So I think that there's a view where something metaphysical grounds free actions, and God can choose which worlds he creates, right? He can choose which world is actualized, but the free actions in that world is determined by the agents of that world. So it's not determined by God. God determines which one is actualized, but I think that the standard theistic response is that God only agents weakly actualize alongside God.
I feel like that doesn't make any sense, because God is the one who's determining which ones are actualized and which ones are not.
You just didn't understand what he said.
Right, but they're free. I mean, the point is that the actions are free, independent of whether or not God actualizes any world. They're just ontologically grounded in something about the nature of the agents. So that's the point. God can't make impossible worlds, and so God has a set option, like a select. Presumably it's still infinite, because free creatures can presumably choose an infinite number of things. But out of all of the worlds, God has, I guess, a different cardinality of infinities to select from, because the idea is that there's something that grounds what free choices are made, and that's not determined by God. Like, God can't determine what grounds the choices of free agents. Only the agents do that.
So we're talking then about a God who can't do something?
Yeah, it would be incoherent for him to do that.
Why would it be incoherent for him to do that?
Because God can't. Because making someone freely choose something on an incompatibilist view, making someone freely choose something is a contradiction in terms. Because if it's causally enforced, then it's not free. So that's why it's incoherent. So it's like saying to cause someone to do something that you can't cause them to do by definition, which is just incoherent.
Okay. So, but here's the thing then. God doesn't cause you to, like, I'm trying to conceive of this exactly. God doesn't cause you to take the actions that you've taken in the world. He just chose the world in which you took those actions and actualized that world. Right? That's the
idea.
So God could have chosen a world in which, any theist turned into an atheist, or vice versa. Is that correct?
Well, God is limited, I guess, by some metaphysical facts. I don't know what those would be.
Right, but our decisions are determined by our, by a combination of our personal attributes, whether that's genetics or soul or whatever, and our experiences. There are people who can convince you to take up a belief or not, and whether or not you encounter those people or what experiences you have that may or may not, give you certain opinions about things is going to affect what you do and do not believe.
Red herring. That's just a different argument against free will. It's not relevant to God. Retard.
It's relevant because God is the one who sees all of these things taking place and what context they take place in, what order they take place in this conceptualization, and decides which one to pick out of this multiversal shuffle.
You're just asserting that determinism is true.
I'm not asserting it. I'm saying that if the tri-omni God exists, determinism must be true. Which, Calvinists agree with me.
Oh, it's impossible for an omniscient God to exist and actualize a world with random events?
With omniscience, no events would be random.
Look, he can actualize a world in which events occur without a cause? Moron.
Okay. So now you're saying that he can do things that are logically impossible. I thought that was the idea.
How is it logically impossible? Look, there exists a possible world where all that there ever is a fucking teddy bear, and the only event that ever occurs is that teddy bear turning into a cat. And that's all that ever happens in that possible world. And it occurs for no reason. It's just a random event. That's not fucking incompatible with an omniscient God, retard.
Wow.
What's the contradiction?
I'm just not really justifying you with a response.
Typical.
Pussy.
Bitch.
Before we descend too far into my territory, can we try this one more time? What are you asserting? The guy who's being pummeled?
I guess I'm asserting that the tri-omni God is incompatible with the concept of libertarian free will.
Yeah, but you're supposed to be showing that the tri-omni God is incompatible with the coexistence of being omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. That's what you're supposed to be showing.
Oh, you've been asked to answer one question, and you're answering another question. Yeah, that'll go over really well here.
Idiot. Josh wants me to stop being mean to that guy, so I'll mute my mic.
Thank you. Do you understand why your answer wasn't addressing the question?
I understand why my answer wasn't addressing that particular question.
Excellent. I apologize for
that.
So, do you have an argument now?
I won't anything.
What are you talking about?
Basically, other than the omnipotence can or cannot include the logically contradictory, which is a whole weird
Can you
calmly?
So you believe that omnipotence can or cannot include the logically contradictory? Wow, you're like the first person I've ever met that agrees with me on that.
What do you want me to explain?
Nicely explain to him why he's wrong. He thinks that an omniscient God is incompatible.
Oh, hold on a sec. Seamus is here. Oh, thank God.
This guy thinks that an omniscient God is Seamus, this guy is making the claim that it's logically incoherent for an omniscient, omnipotent God to actualize a world in which free creatures exist.
Why is that?
You got Seamus, you got a prime grade A internet atheist here, right? Now, don't ever say that I never did anything for you, because this is I mean, you should be salivating.
So this is as good as it gets, huh? This is
as good as it gets for you, dude.
Okay.
So who's this guy? What's his name?
His name is Russelsteapot. His name is actually Russelsteapot. And he's now saying that the three omnis are incoherent. They're contradictory. And we're waiting for the argument.
Specifically, the argument that
Okay.
I was making was separate, and that's what other people were shouting about.
Can we get that argument, Russells? Omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence cannot coexist because...
Well, oftentimes it's just going to turn on how you use those definitions. I mean, well, they had a guy in here like 3 or 4 days ago that was saying that God wasn't omnipotent because he couldn't create free creatures that didn't sin or something like that. And so, but I mean, you'd have to define omnipotent as like being able to do every single thing, no matter what. And like, I guess the theist wants to say there's some kind of type of constraints, like.
That's basically what it boils down to, is that people are incorporating this idea that omnipotence doesn't include logical contradictions. And that's, I don't even know what the points of calling it omnipotent is if it's limited.
I mean, nothing includes logical contradictions. Logical contradictions aren't things that exist. They're not things that can be performed. Square circles don't exist. It's not limiting on God's power because he can't bring about something that could never exist in the first place. So, I mean, that would just be silly if it was like, look, you're not omnipotent because you can't do the things that are impossible to be done by anyone. That would just be silly.
I will. So it gets a little complicated, and I don't have exactly a clear thing that says that this is absolutely doesn't make sense or is incoherent unless you go into that part about it being basically, as long as you exclude logical contradictions, it becomes more coherent. Though obviously including everything in the Bible is true, et cetera, includes a lot of incoherency.
It becomes more coherent. It's only half incoherent, Shamos.
I mean, all this is going to turn on how you define it, and I mean, so it's, I'm sure that we could cook up some definitions and get a contradiction out of all this, but I think what's really important is like, the only time you really have an argument on your hands is like, are those definitions going to be the ones that the theist is going to agree to? And then if so, then you have a good conversation on your hands. But if not, it's just not worth. So what is this? The calm storm? It will sound like I showed up. Now it's all quiet.
We've been talking for a while. It started because we had the definition of atheism discussion, and he's a lacktheist.
I'm an agnostic atheist, more specifically.
But by that, he just means that he lacks a belief in God, and he says that he's not 100% positive. I think. I don't know.
Shamos, he said that people are too afraid to come into his subreddit and debate him. They don't go in there because they're scared of him.
People are afraid of this dude's subreddit, really?
Someone from here made a post in the Debate an Atheist subreddit saying that we should all come here to debate.
That's correct. There's just going to be better debates here. You guys are just talking about like white belt atheist 101 stuff, like, Bill Nye Science Guy or some atheist experience garbage.
I mean, the guy's name is Russelsteapot.
Russell, do you think the argument for evil is a valid argument?
Whatever you want to believe, dudes. Chase the rainbow, whatever, dudes.
Look, you said you had arguments. You didn't even provide one.
Is the argument from the argument from evil like a valid argument in your opinion?
If you define God as benevolent, then yes.
Why?
Because a God that is all... Well, okay, so let me get the whole thing. if you have an omnipotent and omniscient God who is also all good, such a God is incompatible with the existence of evil in the world.
Oh, you're going with logical. Oh, wow. That's an interesting. Okay. Gotcha.
What does the omniscience matter?
Because a God that was all-powerful but not all-knowing might just not know that evil exists.
You know, that's kind of a...
Powerful, if he's all-powerful, then even if he doesn't know all things, he has the power to create a universe in which there is no evil. Retard.
But maybe he wouldn't know that, what such an evil, what such a universe would be. Psychopath.
Thought he was omniscient.
Anything that's logically possible, and it's logically possible to have a world in which there's no evil. Therefore, he can create a world in which there's no evil, even if he does not know all true propositions. Moron.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
So, you're getting into logical contradiction territory where God can create things he doesn't know about.
Do you know the difference between the logical problem of evil and the evidential problem of evil?
I haven't heard of the evidential problem of evil, so go ahead and throw that at me.
Why isn't that a surprise?
Yeah, they must have been scared to propose this in your subreddit.
I guess, apparently you guys are the enlightened beings.
Well, the logical problem of evil is in regards to any evil, right? They're saying that any evil is incompatible with God. Now, the evidential is about gratuity. So you're actually taking the more difficult to defend claim.
Okay. So this is I think I know what you're referring to, and I just haven't heard of it in that term before. I'm not sure what evidential has to do with it. Gratuitous evil, I would have understood.
Thought I just explained it right. You're taking the position.
I understand what you just explained.
All right, calm down. You just said you didn't understand.
Sir,
Retard!
please. Calm down.
Is that what passes for, conversation here?
What are you talking about? You said you didn't understand, so I was re-explaining it.
I know.
Let's try to be civil. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just getting tired of people interjecting random insults.
Tom didn't interject a random insult.
I know.
Declan.
That's not really the point.
Look, all I'm saying is, if you see, it's a madhouse. If you're going to take the logical problem of evil, right, then you're saying that any evil that exists is somehow a contradiction, right?
A contradiction with a maximally or totally benevolent deity, yes.
What's the contradiction?
That a maximally or totally benevolent deity would be able, if a maximally and totally benevolent deity would want to have a universe in which no evil existed, and a maximally powerful or an omnipotent, an all-powerful deity would be capable of creating a universe in which no evil existed. Therefore, if such a deity existed, we would live in such a universe.
Shamos?
I love how Tom is just offering parts.
Sorry, I zoomed out for a second. Sorry, I was texting this girl. Go ahead, dude. What's going on? God doesn't exist. What's up?
He's defending the logical problem of evil, right? He's saying that it's incompatible with an omnipotent, omniscient God, because that God would be able to actualize a world in which there was no evil,
and would would want to do so,
right?
Because the definition of a God the definition of a being that doesn't want evil, a definition of a God that wants the maximum good, and a God that wants evil to be in the world is incoherent.
Well, maybe in order to maximize the good, you have to allow there to be moral free will. So you have to allow these creatures the option of choosing to do evil. So,
can you fly right now?
What?
Can you fly right now?
No, but she's got some shit that helps.
No, but oh god, this is crazy. This has been a couple years since this is bringing me back to the old days. So like some people think that you can't have free will unless you can be omnipotent yourself. Some people definitely. That's why he asked you if you could fly, because if you can't fly, then you don't have free will in this book.
That's not what I'm saying at all. Let me actually be clear about what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you can't fly right now because of the laws, the physical laws of the universe and the limitations of your human body. So the physical laws of the universe and the limitations of your human body are things that a supposedly omnipotent God would be able to control, especially according to people who are claiming that the universe is fine-tuned and all of that stuff. So, a God could theoretically create a universe in which you could fly right now and chose not to. Therefore, a God could create a universe in which humans cannot, physically harm each other and chose not to.
Maybe that's not maximizing the good. Like I said, maybe in order to maximize the good, he has to allow free creatures to have the ability to choose to commit evil acts.
Why would a universe in which that was not possible be worse than a universe in which that was possible?
Oh, I don't have to give a reason, but it's logically possible, right? So maybe
you don't
that's
have to give a reason. That's
you're the one claiming. You're the one claiming that it's a logical impossibility that that's the case, and that God has maximized the good by allowing free creatures to choose evil who do choose evil. You're claiming it's a logical impossibility that that's the case. What's your argument for that?
That it's incompatible.
There must be some type of contradiction with what you're saying.
Who's omnipotent.
You didn't understand my question.
I did understand your question. It's just that it's, I've been, clear, I think, in my argument, and you haven't really addressed it.
Yeah, I have. I'm giving the free will defense.
I understand, and you haven't addressed the ability defense. Why is the world in which people are capable of, physically harming each other a better world than one in which they aren't? Regardless of whether they will.
Why is it a logical impossibility that that's the case? Maybe it's more evil.
Are you just
maybe
saying
it's more
you don't
evil
understand?
to have or maybe it's more evil to have creatures who don't have the freedom to commit evil actions. They're just.
Maybe it's more evil to have a universe in which people can't fly at will. Like we can just make up, ideas about what is or isn't possible.
It's irrelevant.
It just sounds like an argument for ignorance. You don't understand why God would do that, therefore it's.
I'm not saying
I don't understand why God would do that, therefore it's a logical impossibility.
Wow, you guys are just grade fucking A. Brilliant. 100%. The enlightened masses.
Oh, fucking stop. You're frustrated. We're frustrated. We're all fucking frustrated. Be a fucking man. Deal with the frustration, and let's try to fucking move on. You're dealing with some of the most powerful fucking questions of the universe, man. It's not going to come out like a fucking pack of fucking crisps. Jesus Christ. Fucking grow up.
You guys first, like Jesus.
Yeah, you're right. Grow up, you guys first. They're fucking. Wait. Stop and frame that and put it in the fucking Louvre. Grow up, you first.
You first is the least grown-up thing you could have responded with.
I mean, there's a lot to be said about the point in which y'all are right now. Like some of the arguments are going to be by the theists would be something like, like if there were people that were created and all they could ever do was choose good things, then headed to only choose good things, and they could never ever fail at choosing good things, then there's nothing really valuable coming from that states of affairs. They're not really praiseworthy in the sense that it's really, really commendable or really, really a good thing that they've done something good in that world, because they just couldn't have ever done anything bad. And likewise, in a world in which people can only do evil things and they never have the ability to choose the good, they're not really blameworthy. I mean, they didn't really have a choice in the matter. And so those type of worlds there, even though there's in one world just abundance of good and in another world abundance of evil, those worlds don't have any moral value to them. No one in those worlds are
I bet they'd be
responsible or
great to live in, though.
praiseworthy.
I bet they'd be great to live in, though.
So how are we?
So
how are we defining moral value here?
I mean, just think about it. Think about it commonsensically, right? If I had let's say that I created a world, right, and you were in it, right, and I just created you completely evil, and then everything that you ever chose was going to be evil, and I set it about like that. There's no way that you could ever choose to bring about something good, right? You're just completely basically programmed to do what I tell you, and I programmed all evil is on the menu. And so if in that world, you're not really responsible, right? And you're not really to blame. I might be to blame, right? If I created you with that evil inside you, I would be to blame, but you're not really to blame for anything. I think that it's come to commonsensical notion of being blameworthy, you know? You have to be responsible, or those actions have to be under your control. And they're not.
And this is about whether, you know, this is about free will versus, you know, God choosing things or determinism. And, you know, I can make sense of that. I agree with what you're saying there, but what I've been addressing isn't about your...
There's certain types of worlds that have a certain type of value within them. And then there's certain types of worlds that don't have that value. What I'm trying to show you is the types of world that actually have moral value laden within them are the worlds in which someone could freely choose to do good and could also freely choose to do evil. And so in that world, that world, they would have control, whether or not they could control whether or not they chose to do the good action or controlled to do the bad action. And in that world, if they could choose the good and then they decided to choose the bad, then they're to blame for that. And if they're in a world in which they could have chose the bad but decided to do what was right, then they're praiseworthy for that. And it means something. It means something because they had the choice to do evil and did good, or they had the choice to do good and did evil. And so there's a value there. And so the idea behind it is that what makes the world valuable is that fact right there, that there's value within the world where creatures can freely choose to do the good and freely choose to do the evil. And so that type of world's going to have more value than the other two worlds, the one in which they can only choose evil or the one in which they can only choose good. There's no moral value within those worlds. They're not any type of morally significant freedom. Morally significant freedom is just going to be defined in terms of free agents being able to both choose the good and choose the bad. So if that rings true to you, and that should be fairly commonsensical, then that shows you right there why the world in which there is some evil is more valuable in which the world in which there's not.
Okay.
So
I think I can make sense of that, though I'm not entirely behind the idea of calling that all good. You know, it's more a statement of that God wants to create a world. It's more a statement about the kind of world that what God wants to create. I'm not sure whether a world that people are able to create more, you know, I guess I'm trying to make more sense of that in my head here.
I mean, do you understand the basic idea? I'm just trying to kind of pull on your intuition strings. So the basic idea is just simply that we understand that in a world in which, pretend like I'm God, right? And I decide to make a world in which there's 10 robots, right? And I programmed these robots to always do evil things. They never do anything nice. They never give to charity. They never help old ladies across the street.
That's
they
not
never
really,
give it.
I want to
Whatever.
stop you in the analogy here because it's addressing a different issue than what I've, than what I'm bringing up. A better analogy would be if you had made it so that whenever the robots, tried to harm each other or a person, that something cut in and stopped them. That would be, I think, like the 3 laws of robotics, which, if a robot tries to harm a person and they just physically can't go any further, sort of thing.
Right, but the thing is, here's the thing. It's either you're going to give them freedom or you're not going to give them freedom, right? If you're going to give them freedom up into a certain point, right? But if they cross that point, that's when you move in. They're not really free at all. At least they're not free past that point, right? And so the idea works both ways. Think about it like this. The idea works both ways. Now, you could limit them from doing very, very evil things. Like, well, okay, take the murders and the rapes off the table. We can allow some skint knees and some fender benders or something. No rapes and murders. So whenever someone has the desire to rape and murder, we'll just have God intervene on those situations. Let's say that there's some things that are really, really good. Like some millionaires just choose to like give all their money to charity and stuff, right? And should we limit the really, really good acts too? And maybe you'll say no. Like, look, if they're going to do something really, really good freely, let's just not limit it. And what happens there is you've already skewed the world in such a way where it's already leaned more towards good rather than evil. And not just that, but there's also something that could be put on the table that like.
Let me just cut in here real quick a bit. Isn't that the point? Like, wouldn't a maximally good God, wouldn't an all good God want to skew a world more towards good than evil?
No, because you're losing some of that value that I was talking about, right? Because now that world that you're talking about is actually more similar to the world in which they can only do good things. Of course, there's still some evil things left on the table, but there's a significant portion of it's been shaved off.
So
that world actually, despite appearances, has less value than the world in which if they were allowed to rape and murder still, right? Because there's one thing that could be said. There could be logically possible, and we'll just frame it in terms of logically possible states of affairs in which a rape or a murder might bring about some really, really good thing, right? Like, someone gets murdered and it brings like a whole community together or something like that. And the whole community comes together and they catch the murderer and it, they brings the whole community off together and they all engage in like a bunch of loving, free acts and stuff like this and have charity and build a community around it or something. So there's possible. It's like if that's were true, right, and you took the murders off the table, then you could never have any of those goods that come with that evil. So there's another thing to think about as well. There's another end of it. So.
Okay, so why? I guess then it sounds to me like you're making an argument that the precise amount of capability that we have to harm each other in this world is the correct amount. And I'm wondering, do you have a justification for why we aren't much more capable of hurting each other? Like why we can't, beam pain at each other through our minds? Why we can't just make each other suffer incredible pain at a will? And wouldn't it be a world where even greater good was possible if people had to actively choose not to harm each other all the time?
It seems like logically possible that at a certain point, allowing more and more and more and more suffering might not necessarily generate any more good, right? Like perhaps like the same amount, instead of like us being able to do these like psi attacks or whatever, attack each other with our minds, all the goods that could be produced from those evils. It's logically possible that all those goods could be produced by things that we already have at our disposal right now. So it would bringing about those type of evils. It seems logically possible, at least, that it couldn't or wouldn't add to any more good. So
Okay.
maybe
I'll
that's it.
consider that argument, and that is a better, a better layout of a defense for the problem of evil that I have heard before. It sounded earlier like you were saying that you had an argument against the problem of gratuitous evil, which I've never heard of the evidential problem of evil, but I've always heard gratuitous evil. So is there an actual, a defense for the gratuitous evil in the world?
Well, I mean, usually the route that the atheist takes when pointing to gratuitous evil is backed by a kind of a tenuous inference that it all kind of rests on. And so a lot of the go-to move, even by people that haven't really read a lot of the literature, is just to kind of impugn on that. So the idea is something like the atheist is forced to make this type of move. He's forced to make the move and say, well, there's all these evils out there, right? And I can't think of any good reason for why God would allow these specific evils, right? Whatever they are. I just can't think of a good reason for why he would allow it. And so what they want to say is the fact that the atheist can't think of any good reason is actually going to constitute evidence that there really isn't any reason. That if there really was a reason, that we'd be likely to discover that reason. And so they want to move from their inability to scrutinize it to the fact that it's unnecessary. And so that's the type of inference they need to ride on. And so usually the theist will just say, well, I mean, I don't think that you not being able to think of a reason means that there is no reason, or even means that there's evidence that there is, that's good evidence that there is no reason or something.
So one side says that, basically the theist argument then is that I'm trying to phrase this right. The theist argument basically is that the atheist argument is an argument from ignorance, and the atheist argument then would basically be that the theist argument essentially boils down to God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, basically the short of it, yeah, that's basically what it is.
Okay. I guess then, the theist argument then is a positive claim that we live in the best of all possible worlds.
I mean, I think that the theist or any theist you come across should be committed to that, right? Because, if there's some God that's perfect and all this stuff and he's behind it all with a plan, then it's going to be the most perfect of all worlds with regards to God's plan, which whatever his plan is, it's got to be perfect too. So, yeah, I mean, I would suspect that any theist you come across would have to argue for that.
Okay. I guess then it just, we get into definitions of good that get a little, that become basically in, without real reference to what anyone actually thinks of as good. And that seems like a problem to me.
What seems like a problem to you?
Basically, it seems like a problem to me that we're resting on this idea that, that certain things are absolutely necessary in order to, I'm trying to phrase this right, and it's getting a bit late here.
Josh, do you like muffins?
It seems like a problem that wow, fuck you guys.
Hmm?
Oh, just the random chat assholes. Anyway.
No, I'm in voice too. I mean, I have a mic as well.
I'm trying to, actually work out more precisely what I was thinking about there.
Yeah, take your time.
I mean, these arguments have a lot of in and outs, a lot of stuff going on. I'm trying my best not to like drop a bunch of like, big words or definitions or any crazy shit like that, and just try to just talk with you about what about it, which isn't all that much, but
and you're giving I will admit, a better defense of these arguments than I've seen before, and I'm not sure why in some cases more people don't use these defenses.
I don't think you come across very sophisticated.
They'd want to. Oh, go ahead.
I just don't think he comes across sophisticated theists on Reddit.
Yeah, perhaps not.
So
I don't know, and there's other arguments like that you could use to like tie into this. Like, some people have an idea that, like, in order to have some of the really, really good things, there has to be evil, and so it's kind of going on the same vein of what I was saying earlier. But it's kind of another way to conceptualize it. If you think about something like giving to charity, right? And I think a lot of people have like a pretty common sense, like, yeah, of course, giving to charity is good, all things being equal. And so, but there's this notion that, like, in order to give to charity, there needs to be someone that has less than you or in a position in which they need something. I think like the definition of charity in its truest sense is like giving to someone who is in need. But if you think about like being in need, like whatever it is to be in need, it's going to be cast out in some form of evil, right? Like, would people, like, think about it, in a perfect world, like in the world that you're thinking of that God ought create, right? The one, right? Well, would we really need anything? And the straight, on its face value, most people think, well, like, no. Okay, so whatever, being in need has got to be a form of some type of evil. But that's strange that whatever charity is, which we consider good, presupposes the existence of some evil, i.e. someone being in need. And so, like, the idea is, or at least the idea that, like, the theists might want to press would be some notion like, well, look, some of these things that you would agree are good and are really, really, really good things. Those things' existence presupposes evil. Like, think of like the charity thing. Or think about, we'll do another one. Think about like altruism, like where someone like risks his life to save someone or does some type of altruistic deed or something like that. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously that's good. Some type of selfless act, of, helping another person. But whenever you do commit some altruistic act, there has to be some type of risk. And whatever that risk is, whatever the situation is, that's going to be cashed out in some type of evil. You never have to be altruistic in a perfect world because you'd never have to risk anything in a perfect world. this alleged perfect world. And I'll say alleged because this should show you that that world isn't perfect, right? Because that world, whatever world that you think that is perfect, if it doesn't contain any evil, well, the world that you're thinking of, there can never be any altruistic deeds and there can never be any charitable deeds. But look, that sounds fucked up, right? Like, look, yeah, we can have butterflies and unicorns and we can have people smiling at each other and we can sing happy songs, but we can't give to charity in this world? No, you can't. And you can't be altruistic. And there's a whole host of things that I could probably go down the list and say, look, you would agree that these are goods, but your world can't have these things in the fullest sense, right? Yeah, I'm sure everyone could have $5 this perfect world, right? And no one ever needs anything.
But Seamus, that makes a whole shit ton of assumptions,
their
though.
$5.
Seamus, that makes a whole shit ton of assumptions. That assumes that we are all equal. We are all equally blessed at all times, at all instances. Most of us who have lived anything called a life know that that's not the case. That we are from time to time, we're from time to time given certain blessings, and from time to time those blessings are taken away from us often for a limited period of time. And it's in those sine waves, it's in those dips and hollows of life where charity is often at its most important. And nobody is suggesting that God creates a situation where, every single person's life is identical from start to finish. And I don't think it's necessary to have a good life where every person's life is identical from start to finish.
That seemed like based on a misunderstanding.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gus. But I was just saying, like, I was trying to contrast that with like this alleged world. Is that world that you think is perfect, the one that doesn't contain any evil? Actually, you're losing. In order to take away the evil, you actually have to take away some of the good. And that is, all the good that you have to take away are all the goods that are necessary to. Evil necessarily has to exist in order to procure those type of goods, charity and altruism, et cetera, et cetera. And so what happens is, whatever world that you would look at without evil, you'd not only have to take away all the evil, but you'd also have to take away some of the good. And the idea behind it is, maybe those things, like freely doing an altruistic act or freely giving to charity, maybe those things are just so good, right? Maybe it's just so good that it really is worth risking that evil. Maybe those things really are that valuable. Like, whatever it is, when someone freely decides to, risk his life, or freely decides to, give the shirt off his back to someone, maybe there's something so special about that, or that it pleases God so much that it just the idea of that being possible is worth risking the abuses that comes with free choice. So that's the idea. That's the whole idea. The reason why it's this world with all the bad stuff is because you need that bad stuff to have all of the really good stuff. And that's the kind of idea of it.
Okay. So essentially then, so I guess then the definition, God is a being which, like sows and harvests this, these moral choices. Is that essentially what we've arrived at?
Say that one more time.
That essentially what we seem to be constructing is a God that sows this, this world that generates moral value, and then harvests that moral value. It seems, it's a different way of conceiving of this than I'm hearing.
Exactly. Think about God like this. So what God has done is he's basically set up a world that's like a proving ground, right? Think of it like that's pretty much very consistent with all of the theistic stories you're going to hear. This is the proving ground for the people that, make it into heaven, or blah, 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 blah. But essentially, he's just put together basically a proving ground, right, in a finite area of time where people are able to be put under the microscope, make the right choices for the right reasons or the wrong choices for the wrong reasons, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a bunch of value that comes from these things, because apparently some of the people who freely choose to do the good things, and they do them not for a reward, but they do it just for goodness' sake. Basically, what I think is going on there is those people are coming through this life, and at the end of it, they've become a better person. What I mean by that is they used to be a dull little butter knife, and they've come through life, and it's shaped them, and it's been formative, and they've made these decisions, and by the end of it, it's sharpened them into the right tool that God needs. And that's just a good person that did the right thing for the right reasons, not for any reward, just because they wanted to. And then he reaps those people, right? And they go to heaven, or blah 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 blah. So that's kind of the idea that's being put forward here, something like that.
It sounds, I'll be honest, like kind of a monstrous machine. Especially because we're dealing with a world in which you have people who are, grow to be 4 years old and die of horrible illnesses without anyone, caring for them or even being around to do anything about it. It feels, it basically like, it creates this world that is, a machine that you throw, these lives into and pick out a small percentage of the ones who, got the opportunity even to make the right choices. Because a lot of people have no meaningful power to help anyone ever. And are never given it, and only know suffering.
Yeah, no, that's true. And so I think that there is a way that we could explain those things. So think about it, if you looked at life as like a play, right? And everyone in it's an actor, and everyone has a role, right? And they're going to be the people that you've described that are going to be in the leading role, and they're going to be able to work through life and bring good and do good out of it. And then there's supporting characters. And they might be some of the people that, as you said, literally are just going to suffer completely, right? And they're never going to have those opportunities, right? And so maybe on that shake that they wouldn't be given those opportunities. And then you would think, well, that's messed up. A perfect God would want to at least give everyone an opportunity, right? So what happens is, you could think of it like reincarnation, even though it doesn't have to be. You could think about it in multiple matrices where there's only one real person in each matrix, or you could divide it out multiple lives. Some people will come back, and then they'll have the opportunity to play a leading role instead of a supporting role. But generally speaking, the idea is you could be ran through the machine enough times where everyone eventually gets to play each side. So everyone gets that fair shake, right? And maybe there might be a time where you are just, going through all that suffering because your suffering brings out some really good stuff. Maybe you might be, I'm not trying to be crass, but think about maybe there are going to be a child who dies within the first year of his life to some blood-based disease or something, like that. He lived for less than a year, and his whole year of his life was just wrought with suffering, and he didn't get any opportunity to go through his life and become something and make all these great decisions, right? But maybe his death brought a whole community of people together, and whoever's soul was inside that baby comes back and gets another go at it, in which he gets to play a more of a fuller life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they can just grind you through this cog until enough people have had enough opportunities where they could have done right, and the people that did choose right out of the bulk of those times go on to heaven, and the people that just, even when they were given the right opportunities and even when they were given all the things lined up, still chose to do bad, yeah, they get spit out the cog or whatever. So I mean, there's ways you could think of it like that.
Okay, well, that's interesting, and involving reincarnation is a different angle than I've thought there. I actually do have to go. Everyone in the chat is going to scream about how I'm giving up and surrendering and whatever the fuck, but fuck them, they're whores. So see you guys, and maybe I'll come back later, maybe not, who knows.
Yeah, bring your friends next time too. Thanks, bud, for stopping by.
Yep. See you, man. Thanks.
Wow, that was like some throwback Thursday shit.
What a fucking dildo.
You can't fly. And it's in virtue of that you don't have free will.